Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Great. So, yeah, thanks for that introduction. I don't like anyone to watch that news bulletin. It's terrible when you see yourself on something like that. Look, great to be here today, and thanks so much for the invite. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, I suppose, what we're doing on our Smart City programme in Dublin, and I'll talk a little bit about, the citizen engagement piece, which obviously is really important. But I guess I lead our Smart City programme in Dublin City Council, and one of the questions I ask, just to set the context, is, from a citizen perspective, we're super connected. Nearly 90% of Irish people have a smartphone. Per capita in Europe, we're the highest users of mobile internet. We can't get off social media, and we're booking taxis with Uber and My Taxi, watching videos on demand, and Airbnb is doing very well here, though there's challenges with that. And as you can see, we don't even use these things as phones anymore. We're just consuming buckets of data. And I guess the question I kind of throw back is, citizens are very connected, but where's connected government and cities, and how are they using that, leveraging that to engage with citizens? And I think that's some of the challenge that I'd kind of pose as we develop this Smart City programme. It's a convergence of all this amazing technology innovation that's happening at the moment, and actually the price of all this is just dropping to make it accessible to anyone. So you got cloud computing, you got big data and analytics, you got this pervasiveness of mobile phone ownership, you've got social media, you've got machine learning, artificial intelligence. It all sounds very strange, but it's happening, it's taking off. You've got robotics, 3D printing at a cost that is just so low to produce and print things on these 3D printers. And then virtual reality, augmented reality, wearables. I mean, these wearables, and health monitoring devices. It's just amazing what tech is in one of these Fitbits that's monitoring a lot of things, and a lot of people are using them. Incidentally, I think Ireland on the Fitbit Global Index are the fittest population in the world. I'm not sure what that means, or the scientific validation behind that, but it's fascinating when you see some of these new index that are coming out. And I guess what's happening as well is the culmination of all this tech coming together, but also processing power and computing is just becoming so cheap. This is a picture of a Raspberry Pi. I think it's about $5 or $6, but it's probably got as much tech and processing power. And I joke, with people the same as what we have on our computers in the city, or maybe for the HSE or EPA. But that's not exactly true. But it's amazing what power is in these small processors. And beside it is an Intel Arduino board that does lots of interesting things, and it's about $3 a unit. And I guess why I'm talking about that is that when you start connecting things with technology in cities, so buildings, people, infrastructure, bikes, vehicles, what the possibilities that entails in terms of the data creates real value back to the city to help us make better decisions. And I think you hear this term Internet of Things or Internet of Everything, and that's really what it's about. It's about connecting things. And this looks like a movie trailer, but 50 billion connected things and coming. There's going to be a hell of a lot more connected things that we're seeing. This is by 2020, according to Intel and Cisco. But we're seeing a lot more connected things, even in our own houses. You're starting to see lots of different connected devices, whether you're controlling your heating or whatever. It's becoming more pervasive. So, what's this mean for a city? So when we start to connect things, we can do things. We can look at real time how our city is functioning, and we can start making data-driven decisions. And one thing, a lot of people think, smart cities, that's out in the future. It's 20 years ahead. But actually, there's a hell of a lot of stuff happening already in our cities that are quite smart. Everything from real-time passenger information to integrated ticketing to carpooling, car clubs, electric cars, environmental monitors, all connecting to each other, pushing information up to the cloud, doing smart things. The problem we have is it's quite siloed. So how do we try to scale some of this stuff up to deliver real impact in our city? So Dublin's well on its way to being a smart city. And I think this whole concept of Internet of Things, it's really starting to take off. But really, it's got creating a huge opportunity to impact standards of living, how we manage health and safety. And actually, we're on the verge of a massive technology revolution that's quite exciting, but brings with it challenges as well. What does it mean for smart cities? Well, actually, there's a lot of money to be generated for companies, but value to citizens and cities. So it's going to be a 400 billion market according to one source, or $1 trillion market according to another source. But it's kind of a lot of hype And back like in '97, they were saying there'll be thousands of these smart cities by 2007. So it hasn't really taken off as fast as we might have liked to see, or the vendors especially. So a little bit about the transformation journey from a Dublin perspective. I think like back in 2007, 2008, IBM opened up a Smarter Cities Centre in Dublin. And I think there was this kind of feeling that big tech companies would come in and manage and operate cities, but then they realised cities were quite complicated places, and it wasn't so much like you can't just put technology on top of something. You actually need to look at what is the problem that you're trying to solve. So what's really positive is that cities now around the world are starting to say, well, actually, what are the big issues and problems we have, and how can technology enable us to find solutions to that? So you'd see a whole bunch of cities around the world kind of stepping up, their mayors or their leaders embracing this smart city piece. But also what's very exciting, it's not just like the big tech giants who control this. It's been much more democratized with the price declining on all this tech, that startups are really innovating and disrupting and creating a lot of the new solutions that we'll need to be able to embrace to take this opportunity. But of course, startups, you may as well say, forget it if you want to work with government. Procurement is a nightmare. So I think from a government perspective, we need to think about how we can embrace a lot more of this fresh, innovative thinking of startups. So I'll talk a little bit about that later on. So in Dublin City Council, we're quite fortunate. We've got a great chief executive, depending on who you talk to, Owen Keegan. I think he's great. He set up a smart city unit. I report directly to him, and that makes a big difference because you have all these silos, and there's kind of it's difficult to influence change in an organisation if you don't have the buy-in of your chief executive. And we put a cross-cutting team. We've put in a capital budget to try and stimulate activity and innovation across the organisation. So what we also done, so as well as Dublin City Council getting its act together, we've created a framework for the 4 Dublin local authorities to work together, and we've created an initiative called Smart Dublin, which launched back in 2016 in March. So I'll just play a short video that kind of captures what that's all about. In relation to the journey for Smart Dublin, I think we found that there was very little coordination across the 4 local authorities. We all had the same types of challenges, be it congestion, flooding, how we engage better with citizens, energy. And we felt like if we came together to pool our resources, there's a much better opportunity to solve some of these challenges. And on our doorstep, we have world-leading tech companies, innovators, startups. So how can we engage better with the ecosystem to put those challenges out and find solutions to those problems?
Dublin's a smart city region because of the amount of talent that we have here, the amount of companies that we have working in this space, but I think above all it's the attitude to innovation that exists in the city.
From an academic point of view, I'm really excited about the initiative that they've launched with the Dublin Docklands as a test area.
The entire of the Docklands area is actively an innovation lab. So at this early stage we can put new technology in the ground or in the air or on the buildings, and that means that new jobs are created, developing technologies that can benefit everybody.
I think one of the greatest things that Dublin's doing is experimenting with procurement by challenge, rethinking those core processes by which to bring in innovators, by which to address new questions and new challenges around the city.
Just a little bit about the Smart Dublin piece, but I guess, why are we doing it? I mean, I think there's a big opportunity to promote local economic development, to embed some of our projects with the big tech companies, get startups involved, to do more with less, be more efficient, how we engage better with citizens, and how do we make better decisions in terms of how we manage and operate our city, are some of the key kind of areas that we're looking to develop. And I think one of the things we've kind of found is that there's a lot of negativity about City Council. Most of the news reports you see is all about the bad stuff or the things that we don't do well. But in fact, like any organisation, there's actually great stories to tell and great projects that we're delivering. And I think we found, like, talking to different citizen groups and different stakeholders, actually they don't know about half the stuff that we do. So projects like our dashboard, which we've partnered with Maynooth, to put information out there to allow other people to access and understand how their area is performing, to link all those sensors that they can pull the data off and use it to develop their own kind of, their own kind of projects and come back to us and say, why are we doing different things in the city? Everything from the bus journey time, that was like a huge game changer for how people get around the city. I know I use the buses a lot more than I ever did. Putting that out to a Google app, smart bins, air quality, noise monitoring, IoT networks, and even how you pay for parking using the app. So there's great stories that we need to tell. So we built out an online presence and are really promoting that story, not just in Ireland but globally as well. And I think it's clear that cities are facing massive challenges. And some of these pictures, this is probably like something you see every day coming into work. But congestion, how do we move towards a more sustainable model of transport and encourage walking and cycling and get this out of the city? Do we really need this? With the pollution and the emissions, and it's a huge problem. Maybe not so much in Dublin, but in cities around the world. This one, illegal dumping. It's like you would not believe the cost to local government around Dublin just in terms of illegal dumping, and it's increasing every year. In the UK, it's a massive problem as well. These are big issues in cities, not just in Ireland, but around the world. Flooding, extreme weather events. That's just a picture from the Liffey, I think it was about 2 years ago. This is a video a couple of months ago in the city centre from a flash flood. These kind of hyper-local kind of rainfall events. So we're facing more challenging times, but I guess how can we use technology to better respond and react to some of these events? Aging population, there's a lot of opportunity with tech to alleviate some of these challenges. Energy, we're not going to hit any of our targets. There's going to be massive fines, but how can we be more proactive and engage and use technology smarter to reduce energy consumption? So I think look at all these big challenges. So what we're saying is that Dublin is probably the best city in the world to test new solutions, new ideas. We're a great size, not too big, not too small, and we've got a proactive city, and we've got all the right ingredients. We've got world-leading tech companies. We've got great research centres. I guess you're working with a lot of them in the room here. We've got brilliant startups and a real tech-savvy population. So let's put all that together and figure out how we can solve some of these challenges. And I think from a Dublin perspective, we realise in the City Council we just don't have the expertise. We're not going to be recruiting the expertise, but we have all these smart people on our doorstep. So how can we build collaborations with the universities, with the startups, and with the big tech companies? So we're doing a lot of cool stuff with these companies. They promote Dublin as an innovative place, and they bring more R&D projects to Ireland as a result of these type of initiatives. And I think from a technology perspective, what's really exciting is all this new stuff that I never really knew about is happening in Dublin. For example, there's these new type of connectivity networks in Ireland that allows us to connect environmental devices to them. Instead of using a SIM that we use in a phone, you use these new IoT networks that are either called LoRa or Sigfox or NB-IoT, but you can start connecting environmental devices at a fraction of the cost. The network coverage is much better. You don't need as much battery life. So this is a game changer when it comes to environmental monitoring and what you can actually achieve with these new innovations. So I'll just play a little video of what work that we're doing with Intel on flooding.
We have had 7 of the 20 highest high tides since records began.
We're a pretty flood resilient city, but there are increasing incidents of flooding. And the key to us is to find ways of responding to those, trying to predict them better and respond better. So with limited resources, we can have a better response.
Our brief is to reduce the existing flooding and look at the future flooding and put defences and mitigating measures in place.
There's a general expectation that we will, one, that we will prevent as far as possible, that we will give people better information as to when they can expect flooding, and that we will have as good a response when there are actual flooding incidents. So, and that really requires us to have much better information, particularly when it comes to deploying our limited resources.
My name is Emer O'Donnelly, and I live in between the Tolka River and the canal in the North Inner City. 5 years ago-ish, we had a big flood in the area. It seemed that the river had overflowed, and in the middle of the night we could hear water running, and I thought that the water tank was burst or something, and we went out to the kitchen and there was 8-10 inches of water in the whole kitchen. It was completely flooded.
Dublin City Council are working with Intel on a research project on the future of flood management.
It was an agreement between ourselves, Intel and Dublin City Council to explore the new gateways that we've developed. The first aim of the research is to provide good information to the council that they can use for their, to make decisions around flood management.
Intel designs gateways, which are literally small compute platforms that sit at the edge of networks. It allows us to integrate sensors. So for example, working with Dublin, we built environmental sensors and they connect to these gateways. And these gateways are positioned on lampposts, for example. They can be positioned on traffic lights. So it gives us the ability to very quickly capture data, bring that data together, and send that information to the cloud for processing. From a city's perspective, we're capturing various different types of environmental data sources, and then we're providing that information to the city through a portal where they can build on it. And that's what the Internet of Things is all about, the ability to actually react and make a decision.
My name is Roy O'Donnell. I'm the Gully Manager for Dublin City Council. If we had the benefit of hyperlocal data through census throughout the city, we could certainly use it in an instant to know where we can send and deploy our resources to. If we know where the rainfall is hitting at its hardest and at its heaviest, and it's accurate, then we can deploy our resources to those areas, or more of our resources to those areas.
All the challenges that we face, there's an overriding challenge in terms of we operate in a very constrained resource environment. So no matter what we're trying to do, we're trying to do it now smarter ways and with less resources. And the traditional model of just deploying any number of people to deal with problems, that's no longer sustainable. So in an area like flood management, we need to just be a lot smarter so we can get a better return from our more limited resources. I see technology playing a very critical role in terms of the future of all major cities, and Dublin in particular. And if we can work with companies like Intel, it gives us an opportunity to be at the forefront of technological innovation, something the City Council could never do on its own.
So I think that's, it's a great example of the city working with, Intel, been here for a long time, of an innovation team. We're bringing it all together and we're using the city as a test bed to innovate new solutions. We've also partnered with Connect Research Centre, all looking at future networks. And we've actually put out river monitors and weather stations and rainfall sensors. But what we've actually done is we've bought like really cheap versions of them, and we've connected them to some of these new networks. And so we're getting like devices that are 20 to 30 times cheaper to what we would normally procure. So I suppose our hypothesis is if you can make this work, and actually the data has been really nicely correlated with the more expensive sites, you can actually start scaling this stuff out at a level where it can really make a difference. So it's really exciting times, and I suppose Dublin, we're getting recognised for this real IoT innovation and being proactive in terms of testing these new products and solutions. And I think, what we do find though is that, we tend to work in silos. So, in the city we have like the team that manages, flooding and gullies. We have another team that manages the traffic. And then you've got the NTA, you've got the TII, you've got OPW. And we've all got these different sensors measuring pretty much the same thing. So we need to figure out a way how we can join all that together to actually bring a better outcome and data that we can action more effectively. So some of the big challenges, how do we get that conversation across agencies to a good outcome, I suppose, for the citizen. So we're kind of positioning ourselves as come and test the future here in Dublin. We're open for it, and it's a great place. We've got the right expertise. And you heard a little bit about it in the video, but actually we decided to pick a district because cities are big, complex, messy places. And it's really hard to do something at scale. So what we're doing in the Docklands, and it's a really interesting area because there's so much happening there, we're picking that as an area to concentrate a lot of this smart tech. Because there's like 3 billion worth of development in the area at the moment, we're putting in a lot of the connectivity infrastructure. You have Google in the corner there with 6,000 employees. You've got Accenture, Facebook, Twitter. You've got world's leading tech companies right within walking distance of each other. And we're kind of saying, listen, guys, if we create the right conditions, we can work with you guys to actually showcase this as a world-leading innovation district, showcasing the latest technologies. And right in the centre of that area is Accenture, the dock. And this is, a lot of people don't even know this, but it's actually the most connected building in the world. It's their living lab for what the future technology in buildings look like. It's got 10,000 sensors. It's got millions of euro worth of IP. You have to sign an NDA before you even walk in. But it's amazing. That's right in the centre of Dublin. And up until like a year ago, I didn't even know it existed. So now we're embedded right in the centre of that, and we're figuring out how we can create new opportunities working with teams like this. Also working with NAMA as well. Like they have a full 3D model off the Docklands. Just this is like including, you know, the current buildings, but also the new buildings. And it's really interesting things you can do with this type of model in terms of how you plan the city better. You engage with citizens to look at what the impact of new buildings and new heights might be. How do you model energy? And it's just like, oh, you're coming up actually to the 3 Arena here. You can see that that new building hasn't started yet, but that's the exact specifications of what these buildings are going to look like. And I think it's when you integrate this technology into planning, into city decision making, it's a game changer. And also how you use this to engage with citizens. So this is the new building that's going up around the 3 Arena. I didn't think you could fit something in that space, but it's amazing what they can do now. But it's got like it's elevated so people can still kind of shelter underneath when they're queuing for concerts. But this is like, you know, I know it looks a bit far out, but this is actually very, very close to being reality, where, you know, city planners and citizens are interacting with their city using VR, AR. This is a good model. ACOM design team looking at, you know, using HoloLens, but also looking at, you know, what's the impact of flooding on new developments and superimposing layers and look at scenarios. But this isn't like 10 years away. This is now. And we should be looking at how we can use these tools to better plan and manage the future for cities and Ireland, I guess. This is kind of some of the boring stuff, looking at actually some of our assets in the city. So bins. I mean, I used to think that, you know, a bin was just, you put rubbish into the bin and that's it gets collected. Now we're working with companies that deliver smart bins. I don't know if you've seen around Dunleary, the solar powered bins. They send an alert when they're full. They compact the waste by up to 8 times. The collection is optimized, but you actually put advertising on that bin, generate revenue. You can put hotspots and environmental sensors on it. So you kind of ask the question, is it a bin anymore? What is it? You know, but it's actually, you know, the guys in waste management hate the idea of other things being on the bin. But it's the same with the street lights. You know, we're looking at a large scale upgrade to LED, which is a long time coming. But, you know, that is an opportunity for a network, some type of network across your city, but also it's a location for small cells, for future telecommunications networks, but environmental sensors. So we really need to think about how we can use these assets in a smarter way to benefit the city. Everyone knows Dublin bikes. They're the Just Eat Dublin bikes now. One of the most successful bike sharing schemes in the world, and enabled by, I suppose, tech, the way they could connect all the different things together. But what's happening in the bicycle sharing market is really interesting, where you have a bike here and you put a bit of technology on the back that it's a kind of a lock that's Bluetooth enabled, it's got GPS in, and all of a sudden you create a new service. And actually there's about 20 million of these bikes, these stationless bikes in the world, mostly in China at the moment. And one of the companies, Mobike, are nearly worth $1 billion. So the bikes can be left anywhere and you can just pick them up as you go. And they're starting to dump these bikes in cities around the world. So, you know, some of the European cities will get 5,000 bikes just dumped in their city, and the planners and city guys are like, what's happening here? but that's the technology is disrupting everything. Who would have thought, like, bikes now? And we're looking at bylaws and how we can best manage this from a Dublin perspective. But we don't want bicycle graveyards. There's a great article in The Guardian. You know, this is the unintended outcome. We want to get the benefit of actually benefiting the city and the citizen. Without, you know, just these type of scenes. So I think one thing we're finding in Dublin, I mean, I don't know if anyone's involved in procurement. It's just like procurement's a disaster. I don't know. Does anyone like procurement? So it's like this idea where, you know, it's almost assumed that you know everything from a city perspective. Like, so you're going out to the market and asking for something, but you have no idea where the technology is, what the new innovation is and the business models. And you're just, you know, continuously getting the wrong outcome and paying too much for it. But, you know, when you talk to the vendors, they're like, you're not asking the right questions. You haven't specified it properly. So we're trying to innovate in a whole kind of new kind of approach to procurement in the city, and that's why you need your chief executive on your back, because that's serious stuff. And we're working with cities around the world and a company called CityMart. How can we put challenges out to the market rather than specifying what we think the solution is? So it's supporting real innovative thinking, and we're working with a lot of global cities to rethink how we solve some of these city challenges. A good example there is you know, the 30-kilometre speed zones in the city. So, you know, put the signs up. Will that really change behaviour? Are there smart kind of technologies that you can use to monitor performance and do things differently? So we're putting that challenge out to the market next year to see where internationally has this been innovated and how can we pilot some of that stuff in Dublin. This is probably one of the most exciting things that we've done, is looking at how we can scale up cycling in Dublin. I think most cities around the world are trying to really embrace sustainable mobility. But I suppose, there's obviously capital investment is really critical. But if you don't have the capital investment happening as fast as you'd like, can technology play a role? 20,000 bikes a year get stolen in Dublin. We don't know much about how people cycle around the city, and safety is a big issue. So we just put the challenge out to the market. So instead of saying we're looking for a smart lock or an app, we just said, listen, we're looking for ideas to solve these problems. With huge engagement from the market. Traditionally, you'd only get maybe 20 expressions of interest, and very few people would apply for government tenders. So we got a lot of interest from people who are entrepreneurs and startups. We gave 5, so this is in partnership with Enterprise Ireland, 5 contracts worth 12,500. So they look at working with us to kind of develop a feasibility, and then if we like it, we give them 25k to 50k to test it in Dublin. Amazing stuff, trackers that detect, track the bike if it's stolen, smart bells that you can use to survey local communities using this little bell that kind of, you can click it and it sends a link back to your phone. You can write a little report, to smart lights, cycle lights, to smart sign. Amazing. I thought I heard it all until all these companies came into us. And really what we found is, not only did it get our staff engaged in new thinking, the companies that worked with us ended up getting contracts in other countries. Actually, this one, Liberty Bell, got a contract in the US on the back of working with Dublin. Bike looking at theft tracking, they got selected in a big accelerator program in Switzerland, which is really hard to get into. And C-Sense, so this is our claim to fame, RT News. So this was the smart bicycle light, and we gave out 500 of these to interested citizens. I mean, we didn't give them for free, because we learned that if you give something for free, it doesn't work as well as charging something small for it. But we had over 1,500 people who wanted to engage with us to share their cycling data and experience to help us better plan cycling in the city. So I think it's great. If you set out the right context, people are interested. These lights have really smart tech in them, so it detects the routes, the journeys you take, near misses and collisions, and the road surface quality. So really useful stuff from a city in terms of how you plan. And we can create really interesting heat maps. So now we're working with our road teams to look at how can we use this data to plan better for cycling in the city, but using citizen input and interaction. So I think it's a great story of innovation and looking at what the business model is. But also then we're looking at working with a company called Strava, where people have apps on their phones and are collecting all this type of data anyway. So how can you link that crowdsourced data from citizens and use it to better plan your cities? And that's something we're really starting to think about. So on the back of that, we rolled out another couple of challenges. Gully monitoring, how can you detect if the gullies are getting blocked? Low-cost solutions, we put 200k funding into that. Illegal dumping, 200k, and wayfinding. So we put these out about June time, and we're now working with 16 startups. They're all pitching to us on Friday. And it's an amazing experience. It's getting the organisation engaged with real fresh thinking, giving these companies a chance. And I tell you, it's the best thing we've ever done. It's the thing that differentiates what we're doing in Dublin versus other cities around the world. And it's a real eye-opener, because these guys are the guys with the ideas, not the big tech companies or the consultants. It's actually the startups. And we're very much about how can we embrace that ecosystem, how can we open up more data across the city. So just to finish up, there's actually lots of opportunities also to engage with research centres. So the Building City Dashboards project, there's a lot of money and funding in research and development in Ireland. A €2 million project, 15 staff. We're working with them on future dashboards for cities. You probably heard about this one, the iScape project, Francesco Pila, €6 million H2020 project on test beds and living labs, looking at air quality. How do we engage citizens in the process? And we work very closely with the university on this to test it in Dublin. There's also a new research centre being set up in the new year, bringing together a lot of these clusters with €12 million to fund projects like this, where the city and industry come together. So the opportunity is massive. And I think there's no point putting your head in the sand, because this acceleration of digital is just going to get faster. And I think, if you think the last 50 years we're moving quick, the next 10 are probably going to be even faster. And the World Economic Forum, while they're looking at this, they're saying that governments just aren't ready for it. and cities, and they're concerned because there's a lot of negatives as well as positives as this technology evolves. I mean, this is equivalent of Amazon in China, a fully automated warehouse, all robotics, and no people involved in how that's all managed. Driverless vehicles, that's coming much faster than you might think is going to change the whole way we think about using cars in cities, and drones. The possibility there is really interesting. We're working with actually a drone company on the illegal dumping challenge, and they're doing some amazing stuff, how they can detect sites and deter people from illegal dumping. We don't think this one's going to take off, smart cycling. But yeah, just to sum up, I think amazing opportunity. It's happening much faster. It's actually, people can't believe actually where the tech is, because I suppose you're busy in your day jobs and you're kind of just trying to get things done. But actually, if you step outside of that and take an opportunity to think about what the bigger opportunity is, you'll really be rewarded. And I think, likes of EPA, HAC, the city, we need to be much better in terms of how we work together, because we share infrastructures. We're trying to do the same thing, and sometimes, we don't do it very effectively. And of course, right at the centre of that are citizens, benefiting citizens, creating more livable cities, but engaging them in the process. And we create the right platforms, they will engage, and for sure they're super connected and they're digitally savvy. But I think in government we have a long way to go before we catch up with them. And I think it's an interesting question for how do we actually enable that. So thanks very much. Hope you enjoyed it. And if any questions,